Hello, everybody. We are at the Warrior exhibit in Fayetteville, Tennessee, and Linda Williams is with me today. And tell us a little bit who we got today.
Dawn, today we're interviewing Craig McGehee, and he served in the Army and in the National Guard, so we're tickled to have him with us today.
Craig, tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you into the military.
Yeah, well, I didn't start out right out of high school. I started out actually wanting to get into Walmart, really right out of high school and get into management with them, and I did. But in 1993, I decided to join the National Guard just on the National Guard side, not full time or anything like that, just drilling 1 weekend a month, the 2 weeks out of the year, that type stuff, and still working with Walmart at that time. But my official enlistment date was in April of '93. So got with Walmart and got into some distribution with them, got in with stores with them, got into management in both places, in distribution and the stores. And when it got on about mid-90s, there on about 95, well, I say past about 96, 97, I got thinking, wow, I tried to move around a little bit with them. It wasn't quite what I cut out to be retail. I mean, I liked it, but So my uncle and my dad and my grandfather, both my grandfathers were all in the military, and so I said that's what I'm going to do. So I went full time, and actually
How old were you at that time?
well, let's see, I graduated high school in '87 here from Lincoln County. And so I was 17 when I graduated, quickly turned 18 in August of that year, but we graduated in May. So I would have been, when I enlisted in the National Guard, I would have been, about 22 years old. And then by the time I went full time, that was another 3-4 years. So I was only up in my 20s a little bit. So a little bit older than what a lot of them are nowadays that come right out of high school and go in. So had a little more experience out there, but still, knowing what is to come, that prepares you a little bit, but not a whole lot. So ended up going full-time National Guard. AGR, they call it, which is Active Guard and Reserve, which has been like full-time Army, full-time military, but you just go to, my uncle had done that for years, but you just go to the Armory and work like that, and every day run the armories, do everything, keep up with all the personnel on a full-time basis, and any deployments, anything comes down, it comes to you first, and then you get in touch with all the commanders and the first sergeants and all that stuff and get everything going. So that was pretty much that job. And in doing that, of course, we ended up about, I'd done it for several years there, and on into 2000s, and we got our first deployment as I was part of B Battery, 1st 115th Field Artillery. That being here in Fayetteville also, but I was actually in Shelbyville. But we had units in Fayetteville, in Lawrenceburg, in Pulaski, and in Winchester, along with Shelbyville at that point in time. So we got mobilized to go to Iraq in 2005 and 6, and we was over there from November 2005 to November 2006. And again, we had soldiers from every one of them towns with us, about 200 or so. And we was attached to a active Army unit out of Fort Lewis, Washington, also attached to some the 3rd Expeditionary Marines too over there in TQ, which was out to Qadim, Iraq. That was the FOB, the Forward Operation Base they called them. That's where we worked out of in Iraq. But we was field artillery, but we didn't do field artillery. They had field artillery over there, but we wasn't part of it. We was convoy security missions, what we done. And what that was we had teams of gun trucks of about, that Humvees that we mounted machine guns on, and would infiltrate in convoys of Iraqi nationals and also contractors that would carry supplies all over Iraq out of the FOB there out to Qadim. Now keep in mind at that point in time, it was pretty hot still over there. Al Qaeda is right outside the city of Habbaniyah, which is right split in the middle of Fallujah and Ramadi. So we had every time we went out, we either had to carry supplies to Ramadi or Fallujah, which was just hot. And when I mean hot, I mean it was a lot going on, as y'all might know if you look back in the history of that part at that point in time. It was a lot going on in Fallujah and Ramadi. But we also had to go to Al-Assad. We had to go to Balad, over Baghdad, just different places like that we ran missions at. And we had one thing, we had elections going on over there too. One of the first elections they had after we took over and made it, got Saddam out of there. And they had their first elections, and one of our teams actually went over toward Baghdad and helped secure the area for one of their first elections. So that we had that too. I was not on that team, but one of our teams went over there and done that. Most of them were out of Pulaski and Lawrenceburg, but with us, of course. But most of them from them two towns. But we run combo security missions, like I said, all over the country. And we infiltrate like 10 of our vehicles inside that convoy, just spaced out. The convoy could be 100 vehicles long, and we had to protect that as we got carried supplies throughout the country. And so that was tough. We encountered IEDs. We got hit by IEDs. We had some injuries, shrapnel injuries, stuff like that. Some vehicles blowed up. But luckily, as many miles that we put in over there, nobody got no fatalities. Just some injuries like that. So that was it was always, it was hectic on the road. It was at night too. And senior NCOs, we were on our missions at night. We'd go and have intel reports before we started. Every team would. Senior NCOs, which was E6 or above, would be the commanders of these convoys, not the officers. Now you'd have a captain or a lieutenant possibly in the convoy with you, but they would the senior NCOs made the calls. You run the convoy. You was the commander. You decided whether or not to return fire. We're going through a lot of villages. It could be small arm fires coming at you too. Even though we was in up armored vehicles, a lot of small arm fires it's not going to affect you too much unless maybe an RPG or something could penetrate that up armor. But most of the time they were just using just small arms. But we didn't want that either, so you'd have to know whether or not to turn your 50 cals in there on them, and most time I know we did, and that pretty much stopped the small arm fire. 50 cals it's tough. They're big guns, and they'll stop people in their tracks pretty quick. So we just didn't want them. Even though we was enough armored, or a lot of our supply people wasn't, so we didn't want them shooting at them. So we had to get them. We had to stop them, even with small arm fire. So anyway, so we went. That was a year of that, and like I said, brought everybody back. Just a few injuries, some hearing loss, stuff like that. Some of our gunners and things. We might have got hit by IEDs because they was out on the turret outside, when they hit, and so maybe some hearing loss and things like that. But no fatalities. That was good. So we come back, and then I continue. My job. I ended up moving to Lewisburg. At that armory, and then working out of Lewisburg instead of Fayetteville, doing the same thing. But then come 2009 and 2010, we was called up again, and we was called up. We had moved. We was not we was a FC. We was with the 278th then. I was trying to spit it out. We was no longer with the 1st 115th. 1st 115th dissolved. We got into the 278th. They took us in, which headquartered out of Knoxville, but they was out there all over the state. So we was a FSC company out of Lewisburg, which is a forward support company for still field artillery, which was the battalion headquartered still in Winchester. But we had units also then in Shelbyville, again, of course, Lewisburg, Winchester, but we had units in Maryville and Pigeon Forge, and we also had units in Covington and Memphis. So but Winchester was the headquarters of that here locally, and I was in Lewisburg in the FSC company. But we had to go back over with them the whole 278th, which the whole 278th was over there first in 2003 and 4. And then we all went back. We was with them this time in 2009 and 10, and we got sent to our battalion, got sent to Missoula. And we run convoy security missions again. We wasn't field artillery. So we run up at that point. Missoula, if nobody's not familiar with Iraq, is up in the northern part of Iraq, not too far from the Turkey border. And we run supplies basically the same way we did the first time, but run it up to the Turkey border and back all the time. I was not in no convoys then. I was actually I stayed back on the FOB. We had our FOB forward operation base actually inside the city of Missoula, and so we had Missoula occupied at that time, and we was actually our commanders and stuff like that was actually like the governors of Missoula. You know, like whether we run Missoula. Kind of like if you ever remember watching McGehee's Navy back in the time when what colonel, whatever the colonel or the captain was over there on that show, you know, he was the governor of where the island they was on. So it's like our commanders were in Missoula. But we run the security missions. But I stay back behind and I run the forward operation base, the tactical operations center, the TOC, at night. We had a sergeant run it during daytime, and I run it at night. And that we controlled all. We kept in touch with all the convoys that was out on the road. They kept us informed. We kept them informed if anything come up as far as intel and stuff that they didn't have prior to going out, or if they needed something, they would come back to me, and I'd have to make sure we got the proper whatever. If they got hit or just anything like that, we'd have to, anything that might happen on their convoy, if that, like I said, IED, small arm, anything, they'd have to report all that back to me. I'd have to get it reported up to where it needed to go to get them to help, or to get the reports or whatever that they needed to get them back safely. And we had the same time then. We got hit sometime, our convoys did, but nobody brought everybody back then. I think the whole 278th at that time brought everybody back. For that deployment. I know they had some fatalities when they went early on in 2003 and 4. They lost some people, the 278 did. But luckily when we went back over there in 9 and 10, I believe the whole 278 brought everybody back. I know we did. Our battalion did. So out of it. And then from then on, we got back. I ended up, we was in 278, and I actually went to Clinton, Tennessee for a little bit. Before I retired out, I was a ready NCO up there at Clinton, outside of Knoxville, and stayed up there for about 2 years. And then in January 2015, seeing more deployments come down the road and some other stuff going on. I had 22 years in, even though all of it wasn't active. I had a few years there. It was just National Guard. I had enough time and enough schooling that I was able to convert a lot of that time over into full time. That gave me to where I could retire 22 years as like 20 years and start drawing it, and that's what I'm doing now. And so that's in January of 2015. So but that's pretty much how it all went in a nutshell. There's a lot in between, but we had a lot of schooling, a lot of things went on in between all that time. A lot of camps and training and just all kind of stuff. But in a nutshell, that's
okay. You brought something into the exhibit.
Right. I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Use out.
Am I correct? Shrapnel.
It was.
That was amazing to me to see that as a piece of shrapnel that could go into somebody's body.
Yes, that's what.
What would it be in?
That right there was off of. We was on a convoy security mission the first time. It was in August of 2006. We was going to Fallujah, and we got hit in between having the in between our Al Qaeda, our FOB, and Fallujah, about halfway in between with the IED. That particular IED blew a whole front end off one of our Humvees. Just our guys inside just got shrapnel injury, but the whole front end motor and all was just completely blown off. That was a 155 millimeter artillery shell that they had detonated by a cell phone. They had rigged up and we never seen where they was at. We cordoned the area off, tried to find them, but they was done long gone by the time. They was over some berm or somewhere or another and seen us coming and let us get about halfway through. Our guys missed it. They had it hit pretty good. We have people looking constantly. Of course, it was dark almost, but we still have lights, and so we're not flying. We're going fairly slow, trying to get the convoy through because you got all these civilians and stuff with you. So it got missed. They seen the opportunity, but they missed. Thank goodness. If it had been just underneath that vehicle, then we would have right where it could have blew right where the passengers and the driver stuff said, it would have been a different story. But they set it off just right at the front of it to where it just blew the front, and just gave our soldiers some slight shrapnel injuries. But you can tell that's what happens. If that shell, and I don't know if you got one over there or not, but anyway, it's about 99 to 100 pounds. That's what we shoot out of our howitzers. It's 155 millimeter, it weighs about 100 pounds. It's about that long, about that big around, and it's got the metal casing, of course, fuse and everything on the tip. But the metal casing, and of course, what they weren't worrying about is they want to blow that thing where that casing, where that shrapnel, like you've seen, just go, and anything in its wake, it'll tear, blow up. Humans, it just tear to shreds, as you've seen. It ain't just that was one of hundreds of pieces.
That shell would be loaded with these pieces of shrapnel.
They don't load them with it. That's the shell blow. That's the outer casing of the shell. It blows the shell completely up, and the outer casings. The outer casing is all metal, like that would be a piece of the side of the shell. Okay. It just when it blows up, it just spreads all that out, and blows it every which way. And so, in different size, shapes, and forms. That just happened to be that one size and one piece of it. And of course, they bury it and hide it real good where it's hard to see, and they just set that, like I said, either with a cell phone or any little, they rig it up with like any little gadget they could set them off with. And I would say it was probably a cell phone or something, and we didn't catch them, but they got away. But anyway, luckily. So yeah, that's interesting, no doubt.
So would you go back and do what you did, the National Guard, and would you do that again? I mean, I would if I didn't do that, I would tell everybody I'd either what you need to do nowadays, military, college, or get you a good trade school or something. Get you a good trade. Because I mean, most of the kids come out of the military and they start at 18. If you can stay with it. Sure, sometimes it's, we've had our times where there's been no wars, nothing at all, and they ain't had to worry about no deployments, and then, of course, now you got deployments sometime. But if you can stay with it for 20 years, 38 years old, you can draw a full retirement. Now, I started later, but, and you could be drawing a full retirement at 38. Then you can start you something else, and by the time before you get 60 years old, you can have 2 retirements. If you wanted to, you wouldn't have to, but it's whatever you want to do. The military gets paid pretty good now. The money's a lot better than it used to be back when we see right here, we in the World War II era around us right here now, and these guys, compared to what they get paid, these guys got peanuts, but it is really, and for what they done, which was at that time some money, but nowhere near like it is now. And nowhere near like it could have been, or probably should have been for these guys. But anyway, they've done real well as far as the salaries for military people now, and so it's got a lot better. So and you get your retirements based off of that. So anyway, that's that or college, or I was going to go to college. I played football in Lincoln County. Like I said, graduated in '87. I wasn't big enough to play college ball. I played down there with Coach Meadows and them. And my best friend, Paul Caldwell, he was the late Paul Caldwell. He's passed away now. Don knows him. I know. Creffin, his brother, now runs the Fayetteville Fire Department down there. Still, I reckon. And but Paul had a chance to go to a whole bunch of places. I was good friends with Paul all the way through kindergarten through. I told him, I said, Paul, wherever you go, I will go with you. I said I might walk on, probably won't, but I'll go up there at that school. At least you have somebody you know, because you'll be involved in football. But Western Kentucky's where he was going to go. Hilltopper up in Bowling Green, and that's finally where he decided he wanted to go. And I said, all right, well, I'll go. Last couple of weeks he bailed out, and he said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to stay and help me today on the dairy farm. Mr. Maurice Caldwell now, I'm on the big dairy farm in Fayetteville, Vantown up there, and he said, I'm just going to stay and help my dad on the farm. And he said, I'm sick of football. So I said, okay. So I ended up, just didn't go nowhere out of high school, just like I said, started working. I worked a little bit at MMD Lap and Sons in Vantown, but then pretty much started with Walmart, and then joining the guard, just reserve type guard on the weekends, and then, working Walmart, and then we had the store just now. So that's kind of how it went.
Well, thank you for coming in and doing this interview. We
No problem. We appreciate you asking me, and thank you, and Miss Linda Williams here, and Don Count's always the best. Thank you, Don.
Thank you so much.
Thank y'all.
Appreciate it.
Mhm.